All right, fantastic. Yeah, hi, I'm John from GitHub, and yeah, title of the talk, how GitHub works with the community to secure the world, and also Python, because this is a Python thing. So yeah, who am I? I'm John, aka Darakian. Been at GitHub since 2021. Been doing tech and security stuff for a fair amount of time now, and I'm a librarian, basically. Me and my team curate this open source database of advisories. This is what powers Dependabot. If you go and look here, you will see every advisory that we have that Dependabot will spit out to you. QR code there if you want it. What we try to do here is make advisories which are actionable. If you've ever read CVs in the past, they tend to be pretty garbage. Yeah, people are nodding and smiling. We hope ours are less garbage. And that's about as far as I'm going to go with promises. So the foundational component, what actually is a security advisory? It's a statement of security impact in a piece of software. Hopefully it's numbered, hopefully it's unique, hopefully it's useful. Not always true. GHSAs, which is our numbering system, we have these big, long, random strings that follow the GHSA thing. These power Dependabot. If you've used Dependabot, you've seen them. Also, you can write them. If you have a GitHub repository, you can go to your security tab and make a GHSA. This can be about your software in your repo, or you can talk about a piece of software in PyPI or NPM or so on. Yeah, that'll come to me and my team. We will review this. If it's factual, it'll go into our database. TLDR on what a security advisory is, if using thing, don't. That is basically it. Like, yes, there's like workaround information, there's details on what specifically is wrong, but generally just like merge the PR and update. So there's a bit of history with security advisories. CVE is this org from 1999, which has meant a few different things in a few different times in history. I think it's common vulnerability enumeration right now. It used to be exposure, but anyway, this is a quasi-government run program, which really was founded to get people talking about security advisories more so than making them good. Back in the 90s and stuff, people just didn't talk about security issues because it was the 90s. Who cared? CVE itself is just is descriptive data about a vulnerability. That is it. There are no actual standards beyond that. You do have someone who assigns it. There's this CNA system. GitHub is a CNA, or actually two CNAs. And a CNA has the authority to assign CVE numbers about something. There's a whole community of people that like check each other to make sure we don't abuse this. This is a count of CVEs per year over time. And with some fancy statistical modeling, you will see that number go up. In details, this is what it looks like a couple months ago. We've got 171 on that particular day. That's about 7 an hour. And so naturally, if you're a developer, you don't want to read 7 CVEs an hour. You want to read the ones that apply to you. And that's kind of the issue we're addressing, is this vulnerability visibility issue, where you shouldn't have to go and read every single CVE to know which one applies to you. So another issue we try to address is people turning security tooling off. If we are delivering alerts to users and they are not, like, if you get an alert for something you're not using, you're going to turn the tool off. That's just human nature. It's garbage to you. It's not useful. People write about this fairly often. I know this is a Python thing. Forgive me. This is an NPM blog post. It's talking about basically how severities suck, which is just true. And then second, how NPM audit delivers alerts, where you can have a transitive dependency in your package.json lock file. You may not be calling that dependency directly, but you'll still get an alert from it because a scanning tool is going to see it in your tree of dependencies and say, well, I have a choice as a scanning tool. I either deliver an alert or I don't. And, you know, similarly, there's a pip audit. So since we are at a Python thing, this is going to apply to you soon, probably. If you're not already using Dependabot, I guess. So there's a question of like, how can we do better than this? How can we stop crying wolf? And it starts with good data. It starts with data that is cleanly mapped, is correct, and is just verified to like be a real thing. It's unambiguous, it's true, which is not always the case of CVs. And yeah, put a little bit more simply, just better alerts or better ingredients will lead to better alerts. And not every advisory matters, specifically for GitHub users. And surprise, we sort of serve GitHub users first for some reason. This is a CVE about a Toyota RAV4, which is a car or an SUV or whatever. No one is checking a car into their GitHub repo, so we can safely ignore this CVE. Similarly, this is a washing machine that has an embedded HTTP web server in it. Also not going to end up in a Git repo. This is an issue we tend to deal with CVE data when something is talking about, say, a washing machine. How do you know it's a washing machine? How do you know which Lodash you're talking about? This is not always clear in the CVE data itself. And this is sort of fundamentally what we do to enrich our data, is to tie this package information to the advisory itself. We scope ourselves in this. This is our ecosystem model, where there's an older model called CPE, which is what the CVE system uses to map data. It's not good, so we don't use it. We use this instead, which is basically mapping advisories to packages in registries. We do this because it's a thing we can go out and inspect and validate, like, is this vulnerable or not, rather than being stuck in the situation of like, what even is a Toyota RAV4? So anyway, we have this bijection between our namespace and packages. This is what we do to annotate our data and power Dependabot. And so you might think, okay, easy. Well, you'll read the CVE or whatever other advisory, and you'll just find the package. That's easy enough, right? CVEs get really irritating, or advisories more generally. So this is a CVE about the Python interpreter itself, which is available in package form through the various Linux distros. It's available in source as well, but in the Red Hat build, or at least Red Hat 7, I forget which versions of Python this is, but long story short, this is, I think, was a code injection vulnerability in Debian. For Red Hat, it was a denial of service. The way they compiled their code meant that they were not subject to the vulnerability. Same vulnerability, same source code, different build, different impact. That happens in PyPI, that happens in NPM, that like stuff that is only vulnerable on Windows. We don't have a way to capture this today, which is unfortunate, but yeah, it's weeds we have to get through to like make a good experience. Sometimes CVs don't get published. They can be assigned, they can be talked about, and they never actually make it to their source of truth, which is in this case, I think this is MITRE's page. This happens. There's no guarantees of good data at the end of the trail. Similarly, this is an older one. It's from 2006, but it's may or may not even be a thing. Like we don't actually know on this one. So okay, that's fine. Like we'll do the best we can. We'll find the packages as we can. In order to deliver a Dependabot alert like this, we need to know the version ranges. It does no good to give someone an alert for version 3.0 if they're on version 2.0 or vice versa. Versioning is annoying. This is the official spec for Python. This is, if you Google for PEP 440, that is the document where this came from. It's now not living there, but that is compliant. Yeah, so that's a joke project. This is not a joke project. This is allowed on pypi.org. When you're trying to express a vulnerability as less than X or greater than Y or both, this gets really hard. There's actually a really good blog post on what a Python package even is by this guy Seth Larson, who works on pypi.org, I believe. It's kind of gnarly. I highly recommend this blog post if that made you laugh. That's my life, by the way, is dealing with that. So, okay, that's fine. Versions suck, packages suck, but like we're GitHub. We've got the power of the community. PRs are welcome. Here's our repo. If you want to come improve any advisory, you're welcome to. Please bring evidence. I will grill you on this. Because we get stuff like this, where the Son of God comes around and wants to bold some text for some reason. We get stuff like this, where this was for an abandoned, I believe it was a Rust project that had some remote code or some sort of code execution vulnerability in it, but it was insanely hard to pull off. And so the person basically disagreed that this was a critical vulnerability and said, if you read here, users of my library will see these warnings and keep bugging me that my software is critically vulnerable. That's not a valid reason to change an advisory severity, just to be clear. But we do get this because we're open to any sort of feedback and we have to deal with all of it. But thankfully, that's just a cherry pick of the bad stuff that is hopefully a bit funny. This is how it can go when like the stars align and we get things going well. You've all heard of Log4j? Okay, this is a plot of the downloads of Log4j by version in the hours a little bit before and a little bit after the Log4j incident. And marked on there is when we went live with Dependabot alerts, which I sent from like up there. Within 15 hours, 50% of all downloads were of the patched version, which is pretty good. I can't claim that's us like entirely because not everyone uses GitHub. We have no ability to track really like what proportion of the world got their alert from us. Our alerts would have been replicated by other systems because they read from our data, which is good, by the way. But 15 hours to get half of all downloads on a patched version for such a big event is really good. For context, if you believe it's that link, if you go there, Sonatype, who's the company that runs the Maven Central registry, they keep an ongoing tracker of who's downloading what versions of Log4j. And the stat's a little old, but I think earlier this year we were at 65%. So 15 hours to get to 50 and a couple of years to get 15% more. This is some of the like fantastic feedback we get from the community occasionally. If you go and read this pull request, there was a researcher in New Zealand who was looking for essentially copy pastes of libraries in the Maven ecosystem. I asked them for proof of like, hey, like show me what you're doing. What are your methods? And they shared their research paper. And I particularly like this quote where they basically say, we are the source of truth and everyone else get in line. I'm a bit selfish that I like that maybe, but it's endearing to see the community put such trust in us. It also means we have to maintain that trust. We get stuff like this. So if you've used the LangChain project, which is a Python AI something or other, A, it's got a lot of security vulnerabilities. You should look into that. B, you should thank this guy for coming to us and updating all those advisories like once a week. This guy's amazing. We're doing well enough at this point that we've gotten fan art, which I think is kind of crazy because we are a security scanner. And we have fan art. We've got other companies coming around. This is if you don't, so Anchor is a company that makes this tool, Gripe, which is a container scanning solution. They wrote this blog post the other month titled "Say Goodbye to False Positives." The TLDR of the article is that they switched to our data set as a primary source and their false positive rate went to 0, which is really endearing. That's a huge validation of our data work. GitHub Universe happened last week. This is one of the co-authors on that blog post talking about exactly that. Like we are indexing our vulnerabilities in a useful way for them. And so this is basically our mission. We're trying to make a better data set to act on with respect to security advisories. And to that, we have some APIs. So if you don't use Dependabot, or if you would like to use our data in other places, have that. We have what's called the global API. So a bit under the covers of our advisories, anyone can make a repo advisory. The ones that get reviewed may or will often differ from the repo advisories. This is because we fact check them. If nothing else, we clean them up. We try to add extra information, sometimes supporting context. That's what'll be available on the global API. However, if you want the raw data, we also have an API for that. We have REST and GraphQL, by the way. So I think I just put the REST ones on here, but I don't know. Talk to me after, and I'll get you the APIs. We've got this fancy feature called private vulnerability reporting, which you should turn on in your repos. If you don't like people coming around and ODaying you, you can turn this on, write in your security.md file, like, hey, I've turned on PVR. Like, if you have found a security vulnerability in my code, please tell me privately, not publicly. It's a nice thing to do. There's a whole system where it'll make a branch and you can like work on a fix with them. They get credit and kudos. It's security researchers love it. Maintainers so far seem to love it. So, and then we also know Dependabot is kind of noisy. There's a whole delivery problem of alerts that we are working on. For the moment, there are auto dismissal rules that you can set up. So using that example before, if you've got something in a, let's say a nested dependency, you can set up a rule to ignore it. And then you won't get that Dependabot spam, which many people are irritated about, myself included. So that's a brief summary of how the advisory database is set up and what we do and why we do it. Fundamentally, it's not that hard of work, but there is a lot of it, like an infinite amount of it. But it's proving to be useful to the community and to GitHub generally. So we keep doing it. If it's something you like if you enjoy getting Dependabot alerts and you are willing to show your work, PR is welcome. Come help us. And with that, questions.